The vaccine autism myth is alive and well. It's one of the most persistent myths out there. And even though science has definitively said no, 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 the question keeps resurfacing. In fact, the CDC was recently pressured to re-examine the debunked vaccine autism link, again, after lobbying by anti-vaccine groups. Moves like this don't just waste resources, they undermine trust in science and give oxygen to fear-based misinformation that puts children and families at risk. I'm Dr. Mona Amin, a board-certified pediatrician and a mom, and I completely understand why parents want clarity. So today I'm breaking it all down, where this myth came from, what the science actually says, and why saying that vaccines can cause autism is not only wrong, but harmful. Let's get into it. To answer this question, let's go back to 1998. A British doctor named Andrew Wakefield published a study in the respected journal The Lancet, claiming that the MMR vaccine was linked to autism. Sounds scary, right? But the study was a mess. It included only 12 children, not nearly enough to draw real conclusions. And even worse, the data was manipulated, medical histories were misrepresented, and invasive procedures were done without proper ethical approval. Wakefield also claimed that the MMR vaccine caused a new form of regressive autism by damaging the intestines and allowing harmful proteins to affect the brain. He even gave it his own name, autistic enterocolitis, a condition that doesn't actually exist. Oh, and one more thing. Wakefield had major conflicts of interest. He was secretly paid over £435,000 by lawyers who were preparing a lawsuit against vaccine manufacturers before the study was even published. He also had filed a patent for a safer single measles vaccine that would have profited if the MMR vaccine fell out of favor. Eventually, the study was fully retracted and Wakefield was stripped of his medical license. The British Medical Journal called his work an elaborate fraud. Yet despite all of this, the myth took on a life of its own. And why do people believe it? Humans are wired to find patterns and explanations, especially when it comes to our kids. Autism symptoms often become noticeable between 12 and 24 months, right around the time many vaccines are given. It's a case of correlation being confused for causation. Celebrities and media outlets amplified the message. Jenny McCarthy famously blamed vaccines for her child's autism on national TV. The media kept presenting this as a debate, which made it feel like there were two valid sides, even though the scientific community had already moved on. And then there was thimerosal, a preservative used in some vaccines at the time. It contains ethyl mercury, which sounds like a big word and scary until you realize it's very different from methyl mercury, the toxic kind found in contaminated fish. The fear around thimerosal didn't actually come from Andrew Wakefield. It came from a separate theory that started circulating in the late 1990s and early 2000s, around the same time as this study was released, largely fueled by a handful of advocacy groups and some physicians outside the scientific consensus. One of the loudest voices was Dr. Mark Geer and his son David Geer, who promoted the idea that mercury in thimerosal caused a rise in autism. They even pushed a controversial and unproven treatment called chelation therapy, which is designed to remove heavy metals from the body but comes with serious risks. For more on heavy metals, watch my video on that. This theory gained steam in the media and among some parent groups, especially after the CDC recommended removing thimerosal from most childhood vaccines in the early 2000s as a precautionary measure. But here's the thing. It wasn't removed because it was proven harmful. It was removed to maintain public trust. The move was about being proactive, not reactive. And guess what? Even after thimerosal was removed from nearly all routine childhood vaccines in the US by 2001, autism rates have kept going up. If thimerosal had been the cause, we would have seen rates drop, but they didn't, because thimerosal was never the cause to begin with. Autism rates have risen due to better diagnostic evaluation, more awareness, and less stigma. That's because thimerosal wasn't the issue to begin with. Since Wakefield's study, dozens of high-quality studies have been conducted, and they all say the same thing. No link between vaccines and autism. Let's take a closer look. Madsen et al., 2002, studied over 537 Danish children, no increased autism risk in vaccinated children. Another study, meta-analysis in 2014, reviewed data from over 1.2 million children, found no connection between autism and either the MMR vaccine or thimerosal-containing vaccines. Hibbid et al., 2019, followed nearly 660,000 children in Denmark. No difference in autism rates, even amongst children with autistic siblings. And here's something even more interesting. A 2015 JAMA study focused on high-risk kids, kids who already had an autistic sibling. Even in these high-risk kids, there was no increased risk from vaccines. And just so we're crystal clear, these aren't tiny little studies with a handful of kids. Meta-analysis, which combined the results of millions of children worldwide, all confirm the same thing. Vaccines do not cause autism. And now that we've tackled the science, I hope you're finding this info helpful. If you want to learn more about the truth behind common health myths, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Let's talk about that recent CDC reinvestigation again. Here's why it's a big deal, and not in a good way. It undermines science. Reinvestigating a thoroughly disproven claim gives the false impression that there's still legitimate doubt. Spoiler, there isn't. It sows distrust. When government agencies bend to political pressure, it makes people wonder if scientific guidance is ever really unbiased. This chips away at trust in all public health recommendations. It wastes time and money. We've already spent billions researching this myth, resources that could have gone towards autism services, early interventions, or other pressing pediatric health needs. It fuels misinformation. Even if the new study says the same thing we've known for decades, anti-vaccine groups will twist the findings or claim conspiracy. Just asking the question again keeps the myth alive. If the new CDC Commission study is done properly, it will show yet again that vaccines do not cause autism. But the damage is in the suggestion that maybe they do, even after we know they don't, with multiple scientific evidence. You might look at this graph and say, whoa, autism rates are skyrocketing. There's something that is causing this. And yes, autism diagnosis has risen sharply. For example, in the early 2000s, about 1 in 150 children in the US were diagnosed with autism.
Today, according to the most recent report from the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network, the prevalence of autism in the United States is 1 in 31 among 8-year-old children.
But that increase isn't because of a new or growing threat like vaccines. What we're really seeing is a reflection of how much better we've become at recognizing and diagnosing autism. Let's break down the reasons. Better awareness. Pediatricians, educators, and parents are now more tuned in. I personally am learning more about autism than I did 12 years ago in training. Signs that might have been missed 20 years ago are being recognized and understood earlier. Remember, autism is a spectrum, and now we are catching those on the lower intervention of spectrum, which might have been missed before. Expanded diagnostic criteria. The autism spectrum includes a much broader range of behaviors today. Kids with more subtle symptoms are now getting diagnosed and supported instead of slipping through the cracks. Universal screening. Around 2007, the American Academy of Pediatrics began recommending autism screening at 18 and 24 months using tools like the MCHAT. And disclaimer, I'm not the biggest fan of the MCHAT, but it did provide more awareness. That change led to a significant bump in early identification, and it helped kids get interventions when they matter most. Early diagnosis. Today we're seeing kids diagnosed in the toddler years instead of after they start school, thanks to more awareness and routine screening. Genetics and brain development. Studies show that autism is largely heritable. About 80 to 90% of cases are linked to genetics, and many of the brain differences that lead to autism began developing in utero, well before a child receives any vaccine. If you look at the second graph, you'll see it clearly. Even with removing thimerosal, autism rates are rising, and it largely happened after 2007 with the MCHAT. The MCHAT is not a perfect screening tool for autism, but what it has done is open more awareness and developmental evaluations leading to autism diagnoses. This myth isn't just incorrect, it's dangerous. It diverts billions in funding away from meaningful autism research and support, and instead of investing in early interventions, better support systems, or understanding the genetics and neurology of autism, researchers have been forced to spend decades debunking a myth that should have ended in the early 2000s. It also creates unnecessary guilt and fear for parents. Imagine being told that protecting your child from serious diseases somehow caused harm. It's not only false, it's cruel. These parents did the right thing, they vaccinated. And that fear, it leads to real-world consequences like measles outbreaks and death due to measles. Some parents delay or refuse vaccines thinking they're protecting their child, but in doing so, they leave their kids vulnerable to life-threatening diseases like measles, meningitis, and whooping cough, diseases far more dangerous than the vaccines ever could be. It also does a disservice to autistic individuals, suggesting that vaccines damage children and cause autism, fuels the idea that autism is a tragedy to be feared. But autism is not a tragedy, it's a neurological difference. Many autistic self-advocates are asking for acceptance, not pity or fear. And sadly, this myth pushes desperate families towards unproven and often dangerous cures, including bleach-based baths, chelation therapy intended for heavy metal poisoning, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and extreme diets. Some of these treatments have caused serious harm and even death, all based on fear, not science. Let's be clear about what the science shows. Vaccines do not cause autism. Autism develops before birth, long before any vaccines are given. Vaccines are amongst the safest and most studied medical tools we have, and the benefits outweigh the risk. Thimerosal was removed from vaccines in 2001, but autism rates have continued to rise because the cause isn't thimerosal or the vaccines. Timing is not causation. Symptoms of autism often emerge around the same age vaccines are given, but that's just a coincidence, not a cause. And yes, the infamous Wakefield study was a fraud. Tiny sample, manipulated data, massive conflicts of interest, and ultimately retracted. If you're a parent wondering whether you made the right choice by vaccinating your child, you did. You protected them from serious preventable diseases, and you should feel proud, not afraid. If this video helped ease your concerns, please share it with another parent who might be unsure. Share it in mommy groups, online groups, social media. The more we spread facts, the more we can drown out fear and misinformation. Drop a comment. What's a vaccine myth you've heard that you want busted? Don't forget to subscribe. This is just one part of our ongoing series where we break down vaccine myths, explore ingredients, and cover each childhood vaccine in a way that's clear, calm, and science-backed. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you all next time.